Admiral Co-Chair, Flag Officers of the three services, Commodore Veer, President and members of the Indian Maritime Foundation, the learned guest speakers, ladies and gentlemen. It gives me great pleasure to introduce this subject of which I am really proud of what India has achieved since 1947. Our Navy has done wonders. However, my personal view till recently was that our merchant Navy had not kept the same pace. And I'm hoping that today's seminar will ensure that I have a wrong input on that. I'll begin with a few basic slides to highlight our, I'm afraid. Okay, this is just to give an idea of where India stands in these big oceans. And as it is a water planet, the Navy has always had a very important role to play. I'm afraid you'll have to help me with that. The next slide, please. It's not working. Yeah, basically I won't take time, but we have a very long history. Nearly 5,000 years ago, we had ships being built here, and they were at the Lothal dry dock. They did wonders. The next one, please. And as early as soon thereafter, we had large four-masted sailing ships going to Java. A coin in Satavahana which highlights that the Navy was of extreme importance to us that early. And of course, the Chola woodwork, which is something that we are very grateful for and what has made sure that our Navy is great. Next, please. These are some of our earlier dynasties, so I won't delve on them, but basically to give you an idea of when we started and what we have achieved. And although there was a lot of sea power, we never combined as one till quite recently. Next. Here we have one highlights, which is the last slide which I showed you, of where all we went, the areas we covered. What is not clearly shown in this, that we even went to Egypt, to Greece, and to Italy. Those were days when I think ships had a tough time traveling, but they still managed it, and all by sea, by sail. For a short while in the 18th century, the sea rulers were controlled by Kanaji Angre and Tipu Sultan, who eventually fought with the British. Next. There, because the British has better guns and better ships, I'll just give you an idea of the tactics we employed. Preferred to operate in very shallow waters, so these guys couldn't come there. Made sure that we were firing in areas where the winds were slow for us, but the ships couldn't. And attack from astern, because most of the ships had their guns on the sides. So if you could maneuver yourself to attack from the stern, then it would. And immediately thereafter go into shallow waters so that no one could pursue you. This is a brief thing of the paradigm of what all we achieved. The next slide, please. Then the next area which came of importance is when in the Wadia brothers in Bombay ensured that we built a lot of ships for the Royal Navy. The Indian ships were built here, and in fact two of them still nearly 300 years later are in London, and you can visit them and they're still in prime condition and look as if they haven't, no damage has done. This is just to give you a list of the large number of ships that were made in Bombay dockyard. Well, Then before talking about the Navy of today, yeah please, next. These are two very important statements about our naval commitment. As early as nearly a century and a half ago, it was said that the key to the 21st century will be the Indian Ocean. We will decide. Next. And one of our early historians had this to say, that the Indian Ocean, whoever controls, whoever looks after that, and I must say that with Admiral, we are very close to having achieved this. Next. This also just highlights total area. Our biggest problem will continue to be the large number of islands that we have to protect. 11,000 islands, 1,100 islands rather, all over India, and to give them total support is something that we need to cater for. Next. Our EEZ and coastal areas. As you will see, the EEZ of India is practically the same size as the land area. And these are areas where we have to concentrate on. And as I said, till recently the Navy wasn't all that important. But today the government has realized that one of the forerunners in all requirements is the Navy, and particularly the Indian Navy, which has to defend our borders. Next. This is just again a small slide to show you what has been the flow of oil and how most of it emanates from just next to India, and the reason for us to ensure that this area is well protected. Although we have only 6 labours on land and 7 immediate ones at sea, look at the number of maritime neighbours that we have. And this again is an area where the Indian Navy has been doing very well. And this is something which I must thank the present Prime Minister for. I've recently heard that he has ensured that at least 5 or 6 of these countries are visited by Indian ships, so that Indian ships go there, we highlight what our ships are doing, what we are capable of, and build friendships with them so that we treat them as friends and not as enemies. Of course, as I mentioned, there are a whole lot of extra regional powers which believe that the Indian Ocean belongs to them, and we have to keep fighting with them on who owns the ocean. We have 12, just next slide please. 12 major ports which we are using, and a large number of minor ports. Next. Oh, anyway, that's moved on. And this is the flow of trade around India. Next. Continue with the. Here again, a very important point that I need to highlight is that India is at the center of 8 important choke points, and therefore the role of the Navy becomes important. There are 7 choke points which I have shown here, and the 8th is Kra, which for some reason was planned to be dug up through land like the Panama Canal, but it has not yet happened, and I don't think it will with the kind of thing. But unless we have some control over the choke points, it is very difficult for us to operate. And perhaps this is the reason why a large number of the Russian fleet keeps coming to India, and we have to see how best we can look after them. Even though they've got ports in countries just next to us, fortunately, we are still able to take charge. Next. Now I'll come to the main topic. This was an introduction to highlight what we were doing. And here again, the next slide is to highlight that although we look at India facing the north side up, actually we should look south. And this is the area that from India we are controlling the entire region, and it's a very large area. Controls the entire region. If you see our land border down below, there are just a few countries down below, but the main countries are the 47 countries I mentioned to you here. Next, please. I purposely wanted to bring out this slide. In 1953, I think there were one or two officers from Garuda, when INS Garuda was first commissioned in Cochin. It was the only naval air station that we had. Now today, air power, to my mind, is important for us to be able to not only carry out surveillance, but also to make sure that we have control. And in the next 40 years, just stay back please. We have built 16 air stations, including 3 in the Andamans which never had them. So it highlights the control that the aviation has from what it was to what it has become. Next please. The other very important factor is the genesis of our aviation. It is to the credit of our initial naval admirals that they chose fairly early in life to start this system by which India would start making its own submarines. And this only gives you a rough idea of how the design capability came. And that's even more important, because we design our own ships. We have a center in Delhi and with the civilians who ensure that our designs are today the best. And as I mentioned before also, our ships are today perhaps the best in the world. Next. A little word about the first ship that we commissioned. This was INS Nilgiri, which was commissioned in 1972. As you will see from the slide on the right top, the area for landing was very small. It just had a very small area for landing with the anti-submarine weapons behind that. And therefore the helicopter that could operate could, although it was called a match roll, which means it would carry a torpedo, but it was really not what we were looking for. With that in mind, we ensured that the 4th and 5th Giris got the Sea King, which is much more potent as a weapon. I can't show this to you, but a Sea King landing at night, the clearance of the rotor from the hangar is 2 feet. And he's got to land and make sure that those 2 feet is maintained all the time. The other problem is if he doesn't maintain that distance, then his tail wheel will go into the water. So it's a very peculiar situation, and full marks to them for having achieved what they have. Next. Soon thereafter, which is again the first in the Indian Navy, we had the same class of Godavari operating with 2 Sea Kings in that small thing. One was always in the hangar and one flew. So if you had to fly the second one, you had to first let this one take off, get the other one out, get it ready, take off, and similarly while landing you had a problem. So you had to make sure that the first one landed, was stored inside, and only then the second one. But these are things that we did, and I must give full marks to the way we managed all this. Next. 40 years later, we've commissioned, after one 4.5-inch gun, to what we are today. And I will just show you the weapons. It will give you an idea. Next slide, please. This is the weapons. We've mixed the Western naval style, the Russian weapons, and the Indian weapons made by us. And if you look at what we've got in a ship 40 years after we started, it will give you an idea of what. And this is just one of the ships. She is now also nearly 11 years old. The new ships have got new technologies and they're really doing wonders. Next. This, of course, is the new Vikrant on which a lot of people will be talking, so I won't go further. And the next one. By the way, when Vikrant is being formed, just go back, please. I understand that a new dockyard is coming up which is much deeper, and therefore we will very soon, I think it is either got commissioned or is about to be commissioned. Pardon? Yeah, he'll be talking about it. But so that will be able to make sure that we are hoping that our second aircraft carrier gets sanctioned by the government. There's still a little bit of thing, but I think on principle government has been able to convince the Prime Minister that it's about time that we got it, and I hope it will come. Next, please. The submarines, of course, have been built and totally, Scorpion is a totally Indian construction ship. And the next slide will show you what we are hoping to achieve, and that is air-independent propulsion. As all of you are aware, a submarine requires to surface at night for a short while so that its batteries can be charged. That enables it to stay underwater for 2 to 3 days at slow speed. But if it was to do high speed, then the batteries discharge very fast. And therefore, this air-independent propulsion is something that has been designed totally by India on things, and we will now have it so the submarine does not have to surface for 6 to 7 days and then only recharge, and therefore you have the capability of operating. And I think this is one of our major achievements that we've done. This I've already done. Next, please. Some other factors which are important in submarines particularly. We started with practically no knowledge, and today I think our submarines are definitely the best in the world. And this highlights what we are doing. And there are special maintenance tools and design features which are being done by India. Next. This, of course, is merely to give you an inventory of what all we have today and from where we started and what India is today. Next. Here are some of the peculiarities of naval ships which I thought I'll just show you. You can just go through it and see what all is required for a ship at sea. I was talking to somebody else as why a merchant ship cannot be used. It's because there are too many involvements of various factors. Reliability, the ability to close one compartment at a time so that even if there is a torpedo head, you can isolate that area, whereas in another ship you can't do that. Next. This is I've already spoken to you about this. One area on this which I think we are yet to make enough progress is on the decision to export ships to the third world. We are building for them, but we are building what we are making minus too much of the weapons. And to my mind, any ship that really wants a warship is not looking for a ship minus the weapons. So that is where we have to work with them and see how we can design. And I think the dockyards today have become excellent, and there is no problem to be able to design this. We can even look at the option which has been tried once of making sure that the broad structure of the weapon is fitted while the ship is under refit, because that has to be done, and the actual weapon is fitted when the ship goes to its own country, so that we are not aware of the intricacies of what they want us to do. Next. The other very important factor, and I'm glad that we are going to talk about, is the Navy has changed over from the 3 or 4 or 5 people building ships to a very large variety. And today, even small units, people with 3 people and 4 people operating have started building for us. And the thrust that we have given to these small establishments is something that I think we are very good. And these people are also started exporting to foreign markets. So they're not just building for us, but they're sending things abroad, and so they are gaining tremendously. And I think, as all the speakers will tell you later on, the amount that they have gained is absolutely tremendous. These slides I'll just run through because they're basically only, continue please, one by one, slowly. Some of the recommendations that I've made, and as you'll notice, the last point which I covered is building for export, which is the most important. And a lot of our equipment is off the shelf. Therefore, it is ready to be fitted on board. We don't have to do anything on board, and then they work. One very big area of concern, and I think Nirmal Bharat will be addressing this, is that each service is working independently. And I'm glad that our forefathers chose to independently go. Because today I feel that what the Navy has achieved is well ahead of the other two services. They will catch up eventually now with their new systems, but that is it. The second point is the lack of indigenous weapons. Whilst we've made a lot of things, we need a lot of progress still in making guns, torpedoes. We made some, but there is a need for a lot of things. And the last point is equally important. The hull of a warship lasts for a long time. But unfortunately, although the hull lasts for a long time, the weapons and sensors don't. These are the points that I've covered. I would concentrate on the last in this, and that a large number of serving officers are serving in R&D establishments. Over many years, with serving in the R&D establishment, when it came time for promotion, they were bypassed because they were not actually at sea. Touch wood, that is slowly changing, and a person can stay there for longer. Even as admirals, they are going there, and therefore that is another important thing. Continue. Here's a list of the new ships that are under construction. So I won't dwell on that, but just look at the number of ships that are coming on. Next. Next. So we've done very well, and the 3 areas or 4 areas on which we still need to do a little better are mainly concerning. Next. I'll just not cover this in detail, I'll just give you the brief. These are the Indian shipbuilding yards as I know. Next. Of which the main ones I have listed here. They are the ones that are being listed. Along with that, Pipavav is helping MDL and other places in a way. Similarly, LLT is helping in a lot of construction and in ships and submarines, and that is where the speakers will talk about it. So, although the maritime domain for the Navy has been covered in detail, I'm sure the people will cover here. And to my mind, these are important sectors on which I hope they will give us a much bigger picture. These I have already covered, so I won't cover this again. These challenges also have been covered, and that's it.